Some people complained and said it was too gory. I apologize. Try to clean it up and leave out some of the details today. But But it's a story we need to hear as we come close to Easter Sunday, and a story we need to hear as we come close to next Sunday, Holy Communion. Terah lived in Ur of the Chaldees, that is Iraq. We must never forget that we are all in the faith descended from an Iraqi. And God said, Terah, come out of Ur of the Chaldees. Terah got as far as Haran and stopped there and raised his family. One of his sons was called Abram. When Terah died, God called Abram to go further on into Canaan. But before he did that, he made a covenant with Abram. The people of Iraq had a strange way to make covenants. The word covenant in Hebrew is the same word as cut. And today we still say, if we make a deal, we cut a deal. Or if you pay for something, you cut a check. And it goes back to the fact that cut and covenant are the same word. And they are the same word because the covenant involved cutting. Two farmers wanted to exchange goats for sheep. They would take a goat and a sheep and slaughter it and let its blood flow into a rocky pool. And then each man would take off his sandals and walk through the blood and call it a blood path. And by doing so, each man was saying to the other, if I break this cutting, if I break this covenant, you may take my life. When God wanted to make a cutting with Abram, he said to Abram, bring a cow, and a goat, and a sheep, the dove, and a pigeon. And he instructed Abram to cut the three larger animals in half, lengthwise. And maybe I can describe the details of that. I'm sorry. Think about that for yourself. To lay out the half carcasses on a flat surface of rock that curved inwards a little bit, so the blood from the cow and the goat and the sheep and the dove and the pigeon would flow down into a river and make a river of blood. But who would walk through it? God, as the initiator of the covenant, had to walk first. But how can God walk through a river of blood? God is not a person. And as the sun was going down, and Abram stood there where the carcasses were and where the river of blood was, he had this sense of dread and terror. And then all of a sudden he saw in the distance a shaft of black smoke coming through the desert towards him. Did some of you see Lost? There was that shaft of black smoke in Lost that could move around. I never knew what it was. I gave up on Lost. But the shaft of smoke here came closer and closer, and the shaft of black smoke moved between the carcasses through the blood path. It was God. And now Abram realized he had to walk the blood path as well. And he was terrified. God walked through the path, and in doing so said to Abram, if I do not keep my side of the covenant, you may kill me. But did Abram have the guts to walk the blood path and say to God, if I don't keep up my end of the deal, you can kill me? And he was afraid, and he wouldn't do it. He refused. Because to make a covenant with God, to owe God something, was too much for him. So the covenant should not have been made. Then he heard a sound of thunder, the sound of coming now a shaft of fire towards him. A shaft of fire came closer and closer. And now the shaft of fire moved through the blood path. We know what the fire was. Fire is God also. And so 4,000 years ago, covenant was made, a cutting was made. But it was a cutting in which one party said, if I break the covenant, you may kill me. If you break the covenant, I will die in your place. A covenant in which both sides were honored by one party, saying, I will do it all. The Jewish people were so impressed by the one-sided covenant that from that day forwards, every day in the temple at 3 o'clock, the priest would kill a sheep, and its blood would flow. The priest would say, remember the cutting covenant that God made with Abram, in which God said, I will fulfill both sides of the covenant. I know you are not able. The most important cutting of the year was Passover, when a very special lamb would be chosen, and the lamb would be chosen on the Monday before the Passover began, for the 3 o'clock sacrifice. So it's no coincidence that Jesus arrived in Jerusalem on Monday, the day of the choosing of the Lamb. God said, here is my Lamb, chosen by me. You have broken your side of the covenant. I told Abram 2,000 years ago that if you broke your covenant, I would die in your place. Here I am. And Christ became the Passover lamb, shedding of whose blood is a remembrance of the shedding of blood in the cutting, the desert in Haran, 2,000 years before that date. It was always and ever such that God says to us, as he said to Abram, I love you. I want you to live for love and grace and for the dignity and the worth of all people. I want you to live with courage and peace and faith. But if you do not, I will die in your place. You owe me nothing. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.